Okay. So we have today Maria, aka Omi the Bruja, aka the People's Choice, aka Mimi Omiyinka, my Mami Wata sister, daughter of Yemonja, and founder of Magic for the People. And she
Yeah.
has graced us with her presence today. Um, we recently saw you on Walter Kamau Bell's CNN show, United Shades of America, discussing ritual and ceremony, and coming here from the beautiful and rich with indigenous history, Venezuela.
Yes.
Now, Venezuela has a deep scar from the damage of colonization by Spain, which included exploitation of the land and her people, the import of enslaved Africans to work the gold and mineral mines, and then later the cocoa fields. And this was the stamp and repeat model that Europe copied all over indigenous lands. Enslave the people who live there, import some Africans, decimate the land, rape, pillage, and murder, right?
Mhm.
So how do we begin? How do we even start the process? Because this is half a century, half a century's worth of time, right? How do we even begin to decolonize our indigenous traditions after half a century of oppression under colonial rule?
Okay, so first of all, thank you for inviting me. I am
Of
really happy to
course.
be in this space. And I wanted to, first of all, start by saying that the situation when it comes to Venezuela, when it comes to the idea of colonization in Venezuela, is very much tied to the fact that Venezuela was one of the, let's say, first test grounds
Mm-hmm.
for this like colony, or this idea of like building colonies in America. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And usually when we talk about Christopher Columbus, when we talk about the influence or the effect that the Spaniards had when they came, or when they found, quote unquote,
Mm-hmm.
America, when we talk about how they affected the population, we have to understand that our indigenous people that were often Taino and Arawak, those were the main groups that
Mm-hmm.
we had back then. This indigenous communities already had like systems that were working, already had a working community, a working civilization.
Right.
They had a language, they had culture, they had all these things.
Mm-hmm.
But all of these things didn't subscribe to the idea of the church.
Right.
And when the church is financing this colonization efforts, you have to understand that every like travel done by the colonizers is done with the best interest of the church in mind.
Right.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so we had two choices, and when I say we, I mean the people that were the native or the original people of what we now call Venezuela. They had two choices to either become a part of the church
Mm-hmm.
by subscribing and like believing in their faith and saying, no, I don't subscribe to anything else.
Mm-hmm.
I renounce to all of these things that we have built. I
Right.
renounce to my community. I renounce to my heritage. And now I bow down to this. That's choice one.
Mm-hmm.
Or choice two is the edge of a blade,
Mm-hmm.
basically.
Right.
So when we think about the colonization process in most of what we now call the Americas, it's often an either do this or be killed. So there's no idea of resistance being put when it comes to like history and when it comes to the books.
Mm-hmm.
But when we actually look into it, do you really think that people who already had a system, who already had a built community, we're just gonna give up absolutely everything because some random people just like showed up on the shore and said, you know what, the church says we do this, so now we do this.
Right.
No, there's
No.
this idea that our indigenous people were complacent and that they were like, you know what, yeah, you're right. Like, let's just say, do what they're saying because it makes sense. No, it doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
They came, with threats. They came holding blades, and they came threatening war. So of course there was like a conflict. Of course there was like a resistance.
Right.
But the thing is that they were outnumbered, sadly, by people who had in their best interest to destroy and colonize and pillage and all of those things. Okay? What is the difference? And the main thing, or that difference, is the British colonies from the Spanish colonies. The Spanish colonies didn't bring their wives. The colonizers didn't bring their wives. It was just men.
Right.
So you're gonna tell me that men that have been in a boat just by themselves for all this long time are gonna come here and they're gonna be like, nah, yo, we're chill. We have wives back in Spain. That's why our process of colonization is different than the American process of colonization. And when I say American, I mean the United States of America. So the Taino not only had to face the idea of pillaging, or the idea of somebody like stealing and looting and all of this, we also had to face our women and our children being abused, our women and our girls being taken, and forming what we now know as mestizaje, that is basically the combination of races that creates what we now know as modern day Venezuelans, or what we now know as modern day Dominicans, Puerto Ricans, etc., etc., etc. Okay? So that's the main difference. And when we look at that, we're fixing another wound. We're not only talking about the wound that is done onto the land by the colonizer, but the wound that is done onto the feminine energy and the divine feminine of our collective.
Right.
So it goes a little bit like more connected to the divine feminine that we thought it would be.
Right.
So I feel like the main interest right now, and the main part right now that we can do in order to decolonize, is basically understand what the wound is.
Right.
What is like the composition of that wound, and how do we ourselves, not other people, imitate those traits, or imitate the behavior of the colonizer, and to what extent we have internalized this behavior. Because the thing with what we call the white man, or what we call the colonizer, however you want to call it, the thing with this particular oppressor is that they have not only made it into our history books, into our actual spaces, they have not only colonized the physical, they have colonized the mental.
And the astral.
So, and the astral, exactly. So because those three things are connected.
Right.
So how do I keep you oppressed in the physical aspect? I need to touch the other two. So in order to destroy whatever chains are still like binding us in the physical, we need to look into the astral and the mental. Because a lot of the things we know as fact are told through the lens of colonization and are told through the lens of oppression. Therefore, if I continue perpetuating these things, I am giving more power to that.
Right.
You see? So that's kind of like the main mission right now, to like understand, where am I imitating? Where am I mimicking in order to assimilate? Because I don't mimic because I want to oppress.
Right.
Like that's not my main motivation to mimic. I mimic because if I don't, there's the edge of the blade.
Right.
It's a more metaphorical edge of the blade now, but it's still the same. See? So yeah, that's pretty much it.
Oh, wow. Thank you for that. That was a beautiful history lesson. I think one of the ways that we can connect with that history, because while the British did bring their wives, they still were very happy to rape Indigenous women, to rape African women, And we have classifications under these mixes of mulatto, octoroon,
We have the same thing.
quadroon. Y'all got the same thing. So
But you know where you got that from?
what's that?
Like where you got the, it's called caste system.
Mm-hmm. That's
And
right.
that you got it from us.
Okay.
And that's where it's like fucked up.
Right.
Because you see, the Spaniards did this,
Mm-hmm.
and then the British were like, huh, that works.
Yep.
So let us just, the same way,
Right.
when we had Jim Crow here in the States,
Mm-hmm.
back in Germany,
Mm-hmm.
they were like, huh, this is what they're doing to like, oh, so this is what we're gonna implement.
Okay.
It's history repeating
It
itself.
just keeps
The
repeating.
oppressors are all on the same team.
Yes.
But they come from different backgrounds.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, they're gonna look to each other and be like, oh, so and so had this idea and it worked.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna take it and I'm gonna apply it here. And it's gonna work.
It is. Every time.
Because the people have no way of knowing what this is. Like we didn't understand differences between like race, because we only had Black, Indigenous, Spaniards. That was it. When they came, it was Black, Indigenous, and Spaniards. When everybody started meddling with everybody, we started getting a bunch of like small characteristics or small like divisions,
right?
That now have become what we understand as colorism,
right?
And what we understand as the paper bag law and the paper bag test and all that. The same thing,
right?
It relies on the same thing. If you are this percentage this and this percentage this, you are valid. But if you are under this list of things, you're not allowed here, or you're not welcome, or we're not going to be open to you.
Right.
And it hasn't changed.
No, it hasn't. And we are still looking at it through a white lens. Even as we are working to decolonize our witchcraft and decolonize our practices, we still have that tint in there of the effects of what that did to our people. And it's so crucial right now to really access that information that exists in our DNA so we can go back before 500 years ago to the time when, you know, and even back before that, before patriarchy was the order of the day, because as we know, patriarchy is much older than, you know, Eurocentrism,
the colonizers, yes,
right, and colonization. And that takes me to Magic for the People and the decolonization coursework you offer through that series. And because of Magic for the People is why I call you the people's choice, because you give a damn about the people and it really shows.
Of course.
Okay. So can you just give me a little bit of just like a quick rundown of what is Magic for the People and how can people sign up for class and what do you offer with that?
Okay, so Magic for the People was born as a way for me to like channel all this like efforts that I was doing to like provide information. I am a constant learner. Like aside from being a witch, aside from being like a witchcraft practitioner, aside from being an aborisha, I am somebody who's constantly learning. And I like learning from everything. I am not the type of person to like close myself to something just because it's not on my lane, or just because I am not a psychologist. Why should I be reading this book? You know what I mean?
Right.
When I was little, I grew up in a house full of grown-ups. So I was very encouraged to read, to cultivate like the knowledge, and to like be very like mature in that sense. Like have like respect for books and respect for like teachers and understand that idea. And I grew up thinking that most of the information that I read in books was true. I grew up thinking that if it's in a book, it's because it must be true.
Right.
Okay. So that took a long time and a lot of effort to deconstruct that and to realize that sometimes people, like a lot of people can write books, you know what I mean? Anyone can write a book nowadays. And thinking about that brought me to the realization that a lot of the things that I have read already when it comes to my witchcraft practice, I don't apply them because a lot of them are just BS.
Yes.
Like a lot of them are just trash.
Yep.
And if you think about that, and if you like start like running through that thought, that's where Magic for the People originates. From this sense of like, okay, how much of this is true? How much of this is for us? How much of this is actually serving me and not serving somebody else's purpose?
Right.
See? So Magic for the People started officially when the pandemic hit. Because before that, I was very like busy in the outside world. And I never had like the time to sit down and be like, oh, I'm gonna teach, or oh, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna organize, and I'm gonna da-da-da. I never had time for that. And it would always be somebody else coming to me being like, oh, like I have this, do you want to teach this class? Or I have this, do you want to do this, do you want to do that? It was always like a third person. And to that, I always like quote my friend Sabel Santa, and I always thank her. Sabel had an initiative here in Florida that was called Bruja School. And Bruja School was basically my first opportunity to teach under like this new lens of like decolonization and this new lens of like dismantling the system through witchcraft, through magic. And Sabel plays like a very important role in who I am as Magic for the People and what I have built as Magic for the People. Like we jokingly like constantly talk about if Magic for the People had like a coven house, we would have to like commission a portrait of Sabel. One of the like libraries, the mini libraries within the house has like a giant portrait of Sabel in the back. And it's because she has like inspired me to create this space.
Right.
And when I started Magic for the People, it was really just me offering things on the internet, like saying, you know what, I know about this one thing, and I'm very good at explaining this one thing. So let me teach about it. It wasn't from a place of I am more knowledgeable than so-and-so, or I am certified to,
right.
It comes from the place of, oh, I received the lessons from all these years of experience and all these years of reading and dissecting and researching. So I'm gonna like compilate all that into a 60-minute class, 45-minute class, and we're gonna talk about it next Saturday. Who's down? That's basically what happened, like how it got started.
Right.
And I proved myself that I can actually do that.
Right.
And at the same time, I realized that there was a need for it. And there was a need to understand that witchcraft as a whole is very much subscribing to a Eurocentric school of thought. It's very much seeing us and our heritage as inferior.
Which is really interesting.
Yeah. How can I just say, you know what? I am a witch and I practice witchcraft. And I have read Aleister Crowley. And I have read Gerald Gardner. And I have read all the white men. All the white men, I have read all of them. But like any of those men, like, would they be okay with me practicing in their same space?
Right.
Would they stand up for me?
I'm going to tell you something that I did learn from a black Wiccan priestess. She said that most of them know that, number one, in order for their magic to pop, they need you. But they will use you in order to make their magic pop. They will not exalt you in the ways that you deserve based on the knowing that they need you. They need you the magic to pop. So yeah, she was like, yeah, I go into these spaces and they know who I am and they know that they need me in order for it to really work the way they want it to work. The results will not be the same without me there. So, they are fully aware
Yeah.
of their place and of ours, right? But they can't say it because European witchcraft is still operating in solidarity to Eurocentrism and whiteness. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And if you think about it, it goes to the extent of anti-blackness within the language.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that I have always spoken about.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that I've always been very like eager to discuss.
Mm-hmm.
Because there is like one of the little, like, let's say, I wouldn't say call it rules, but one of the little notes, I think it's number 12 or number 13 on this like witches like agreement that was done here in the States.
Mm-hmm.
It's called the American Association of Witches, I believe. Let me just look for it real quick.
Okay.
But this text is basically what most Wiccan witches in America subscribe to.
Mm-hmm.
So when we look at this particular text, there's one line that talks about not worrying about the past and not worrying about like the past is not something that we care about. We focus on the present and the future.
Mm-hmm.
So when you think about that, there's a lot of resistance when you talk to people who are Wiccan. There's a lot of resistance to discuss the fucked up things that we've been through.
Right.
It's mostly because they don't think that the past is something that is worth discussing.
Yeah.
And it's a good way of seeing it. Like, it's a perfect way of seeing it because a lot of people have done fucked up things. So we're going to be like, oh, we're in the present and we look forward. That's nice. That's wonderful. Well, how does that play out when the past is constantly on the backs of people like me and you? When the past is built on you and I suffering. When the past is built on you and I being cast out. You know?
Right.
Like, we have to address those things.
We have to because the present is built on that.
Exactly.
You cannot move forward until you address how the past affects the present. Because
exactly how am I gonna like feel comfortable in a practice where the past is not being discussed and my people's suffering is a part of that past
and the present?
So exactly.
Right.
So if you think about that, it's very like weird.
Yeah, very weird.
To like sit on that space because we're not gonna acknowledge all the things my ancestors, your ancestors, our collective ancestors had to go through.
Right.
Like, in order for you to sit here and talk to me about all these things,
where did you get
we're not gonna acknowledge that. It's disrespectful.
It's very disrespectful. You didn't pull this knowledge out your ass today. This is ancient practice that you are applying right now. So why would you not care or pay homage or learn or study that?
The American Councils of Witches, and the text is called Principles of Wiccan Belief, written in 1974. And the thing I quoted is number 11, my bad. As American witches, we are not threatened by debates on the history of the craft, the origins of various terms, the legitimacy of various aspects of different traditions. We are concerned with the present and the future.
Wonderful, white woman, spoken like a true European. I'm not surprised. I'm not
exactly
shocked. Right.
So we're not gonna debate the history of the craft. So that's why the job that I'm doing is like corrosive. It's like it triggers white practitioners because we're not supposed to talk about that.
Right.
Like, why are we wasting time discussing the past. Because if we didn't, we would be basically shitting on the legacy of a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
We wouldn't be sitting here if it weren't for them.
Right.
So
yeah, it's insanity. Like I cannot imagine not recognizing the great mothers and fathers who came before me, who lived and died, who ran, who escaped, who established maroon colonies, right? Maroon, not colonies, maroon communities in the swamps of North Carolina and Virginia. Like, I'll be damned if I don't pay homage to the people who gave birth to this revolutionary right here.
Of course.
Right? And this revolutionary right here. Right? And all of the people that I know who are doing this work. So, can you tell us a specific, because we want to now get into, now we're going to bring it to the present, right? Because we have a lot of work to do, right? And I don't really see how we're going to get there without uniting with Indigenous people across the planet, right? Our family, and I reference our family in Australia a lot because they are going through it, like all of our people everywhere when it comes to taking their land back. They have been begging the Australian government to give them back their sacred lands for many generations now, right? And we here in America, in the United States, we have whole entire communities that were bulldozed, bombed, and built over, that were owned by Black families, poor Black families, wealthy Black families, people that came together and said, this is what we want and this is what we're going to create. Since they won't help us or give us anything, we'll make a way ourselves, right? So what kind of work can we do right now to secure safe spaces for ourselves, right? Even if we can't necessarily grab that land back, how do we secure some land, some space, something for ourselves that is ours?
I feel like the main concern, as I was saying before, is the idea of, like, first of all, reclaiming the physical, like reclaiming me, which I have ownership over, in order for me to reclaim bigger space, or in order for me to reclaim bigger physical space. Because a lot of the things we are going through as a collective are also influenced by the fact that a lot of us have internalized all of this colonization process.
Right.
So when we are not doing the constant work to decolonize the self, to decolonize myself, my circle, my family, my community, my group, like the school that I send my children to, you know what I mean? Like, to decolonize my common spaces.
Right.
I cannot claim anything bigger than that.
I see.
Because it's kind of like saying, how would I have control over this big conglomerate when I do not have control over I? Okay? And that's kind of like the tough part to understand.
Yeah.
And that's where the work actually goes. Like, because I don't like being the type of person who says, oh yes, like I want world peace, so that starts with outside of me. It don't work like that.
Right.
Because if we're gonna sit here and wait for governments to give us our things back, like we've seen how, yeah, we're gonna wait forever, because like we've been, like, the African American community has been waiting on reparations since when?
It's 1865. Right.
So are we gonna be waiting on them to give us our land back?
Right.
So it's basically understanding that the only way, that the only thing that we own right now, basically, and the only thing that we have complete absolute autonomy and complete absolute ownership over is ourselves, and the extensions of ourselves.
Right.
And the extensions of ourselves mean our children.
Ashe. That's right.
So when we are programmed to operate within colonizer terms and within colonizer ideals, we are just a machine working for the bigger operation. We're just a cog in the machine, just like
Right.
bird.
Right.
So it's basically realizing, first of all, I am a part of this machine. How do I remove myself from it? Or even, how do I operate within this machine in a way that I can dismantle it instead of continue pushing it forward? You see?
Yep, I do.
Because yeah, I still have like white people around me. Like I still talk to white people. It's not like I don't have white friends. But I do my due diligence of talking to them and telling them, this is not good. This is not all right. This is not great. So how can you use your magical privilege powers and help me? That's it. It's basically understanding how I can use the autonomy that I have over myself to take over me and my own, and in a collective manner, we can take over a bigger space.
Right.
Because if not, it doesn't work.
It doesn't work. You're right. You're absolutely right. It was there's a woman who has an organization called the NAP Ministry. I don't know if you've seen her.
Yeah, I'm familiar with her.
I love her posts. And one of the things that she says a lot is the best way to participate in the breakdown of the system is to rest.
Yes.
To reclaim your rest and take your rest back. Take your naps. Take your time away to sleep. Allow yourself time to just rest. We're so busy participating, as you said, in the machine and doing our part as cogs in the wheel. And my next question for you is, how can we create a lifestyle of flow and ease while actively resisting colonization and going through the self-work of decolonizing our minds and our magic?
I like talking a lot about the idea of checking in with the body. Like, I can do everything I want, anything I want, but it has to pass this check first. Like, if my body doesn't have the capacity to do all of these wonderful, marvelous things, I have to understand that I am not the only person working to dismantle the system.
Okay.
And if I take a break, there should be more people around me that are pushing against this, so I can rest for a little bit. I'll go back to it and somebody else can rest.
Right.
But it's a collective effort.
Right.
So a lot of this like fight, a lot of people believe that it's rooted on the self. It's just rooted on me, and what I can do and how I go and what I do. And when you just make it about you, there's no time for resting.
Right.
Because it's kind of like, who was it that had to hold the world like this?
Atlas.
Yeah, that guy. I always forget all of the names. I'm terrible.
It's all good, right?
But you are not Atlas. Stop thinking you have to carry the world on your back.
Right.
You are not Atlas. There's more people holding things together with you.
Right.
And if you don't see them, you have to actively look for them and build that support system around you. Because if not, how the fuck are you gonna rest? If you're like, imagine you have to protect a village, right?
Right.
You have to protect the village, and it's just you.
Right.
If you fall asleep, it's done.
Right.
You're on the lookout for like the enemy.
Mm-hmm.
And if you fall asleep, it's done. Like they jump in.
Right.
Imagine the amount of stress that you are. I cannot fall asleep because if the enemy comes, and what if the enemy comes? I'm just gonna rest for a little bit. But what if they just like randomly show up? Or what if they ambush me? What if I'm in extreme danger now? Like, it's all of this like chaos.
Right.
And all of this catastrophizing that starts happening from the idea of just me upholding this entire movement. And that's crazy.
Right.
That's no way for like to live for nobody.
Right.
And that's why the collective is what matters. That's why the collective should be like the main thing. Because if the collective is who's pushing against it, it means that if I cannot push today, there's more people pushing.
Mm-hmm.
And in like my way of honoring those more people pushing is by doing the amount of things that I can with the tools that I have been given.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
Right.
And if I need to take a break, I have to take a break. That's like, it's basically understanding that if you don't do what the body needs, the body shuts down.
You will be forced to take a break.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So what good are you for the revolution? What good are you for change if you're out of energy? If you're spent?
Mm-hmm.
Nothing.
Right.
Like in Spanish, we have a term that's called carne de cañón. That's basically when somebody's like in front of the cannons.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like what the people usually push as like a sacrifice. Like, these are the people who get like out first in war.
Mm-hmm.
And the people who are not like strong enough to fight,
Mm-hmm.
that's where they go.
Right.
So what am I? Where am I gonna put myself?
Mm-hmm.
Am I gonna put myself in the front lines with no energy to fight, where I am vulnerable? Or am I gonna have my energy like to a proper level,
Mm-hmm.
and realize, okay, I'm strong enough to be in the front lines. Let me go over there with my energy on 100.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of just being there weak,
Right.
being there like just adding up to just like a mountain of people
Mm-hmm.
that is just like not doing absolutely anything.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like, it's about understanding that you don't have to put yourself in danger in order to be out there.
Right.
You don't have to put yourself in danger's way in order to do things.
Mm-hmm.
If you are not capable, if you're not able, if you're not strong enough, it's doing a disservice to yourself to push yourself to that extent.
Right.
It's like saying, you know what, body, I don't really care what you have to say. I am going out there.
Mm-hmm.
And what if your body shuts down out there?
Whew. I tell
Other people are going to have to deal with you.
Right. This is why I say that for most of us, I don't want to, it's difficult for me to say it out loud because I never want to speak on how anybody expresses their resistance.
No, I feel like it's about you. Like,
right.
This is, as always, this is my personal opinion.
Right.
You're entitled to your personal opinion.
Right.
Everyone is entitled to fight the fight however they want to fight.
However they want to fight the fight. Exactly.
Exactly.
And that's why I'm often hesitant to share my opinion, because a lot of times it's like, who asked you? If I want to be out here on the front lines, that's my business, right?
Go ahead.
Go ahead, right? As for me and mine, we will serve our naps, right? We will be in the house getting prettier by the minute. Okay. I am not participating in any frontline protests. There was a whole group of protesters who were shot by an aspiring police officer who was 17 years old with an AR, was it an AR-15 he had out there, and he just gunned people down who were peacefully protesting. And then he signaled the police with a hand sign and a motion, and they let that little man live. He just went on about his business. And you have, people being shot in their sleep in their homes, black people being killed in the streets by police officers for absolutely no reason, being shot in the back after running away, walking away. And you know it's I'm not gonna be, I don't want to be out there in that mix until you are talking about organizing, and we are talking about armed resistance, until we're talking about war strategy. I have no interest in fly by night going out confronting my open enemy. I have no interest in it, right? I need some strategists. I need some thinkers.
But that's the thing. Think about it this way. When we had strategists, when we had thinkers, what has happened to those people?
Well, it depends on which era you're speaking on, because if you're talking about the Haitian Revolution,
No. Hold on. I am talking about modern day.
Modern day.
I'm talking about when now that we have governments, and that we have the CIA like at work, that we have established quote unquote modern day government.
Right. Well, like, all of these
a lot of the people, they put a target in their back.
Yep, and they assassinated them. They were public figures, they were speakers, and they were moving boots to the ground.
Yeah. Right? So who is gonna take on that, knowing that is gonna put a target on their back?
Publicly, nobody. No one that I can think of.
And that's the thing. That we have to understand that yes, there's a need for all of these things. Yes, there's a need for strategy. There's a need for all these things. But the problem is that out in the open is no longer an option.
It's not.
Because out in the open is a target on your back.
Thank you. And to be honest, if a target is not on your back, I do not trust you. Like, I don't trust, quote unquote, leadership, right? Who are beloved by the American government, who are not being assassinated by the American government, who have not been targeted.
Who don't pose a threat to the American government. Because the thing is that, and not only like, I don't like discussing governments like that. I am more about discussing systems.
Right.
Like, it's not about a specific period of the government. It's the system.
Right.
What needs to be removed, what needs to be changed, what needs to be updated is the system itself. And if I am somebody who's strategizing against the system and the system loves me, that's iffy.
Right.
That's really iffy, because it's kind of like saying, oh, I am the one that can eliminate the predator, but the predator is cool and chill with me. Like, the predator is not actively trying to destroy me.
Right.
Come on. Like, some logic into that, it's like always necessary. Some critical thinking is very much needed. Right. And critical thinking is basically the main part of this whole decolonization job. Like, sitting down and being like, okay, is this logical? Through the mind? Right. Yes, no. Is this logical on the physical, like, material aspect? Yes, no. Is this, like, does this sit right with spirit? Yes, no. Easy peasy.
Right.
It's not that complicated.
Right.
Critical thinking is very much needed. Right. Because there's a lot of Wizard of Oz situations going on where people are like orchestrating things in the back and we're not seeing it. And the only thing it takes to actually see it is critical thinking.
Right.
And that's why I no longer subscribe to Eurocentric witchcraft. I no longer subscribe to paganism. I no longer subscribe to Wiccan. Because to me, that doesn't sit right with spirit.
Right.
To me, great. If it works for you, more power to you.
Right.
If you are somebody who's watching this and consider yourself a black pagan or a brown pagan, I congratulate you, and I encourage more people like you to claim that out loud. You know what I mean? But I am not that. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I am. So my thing is understanding that without critical thinking and without rational thought, none of the systems would exist.
Right.
So what makes me think that I'm gonna dismantle the system by not applying critical thinking or by not applying rational thought? You have to use their same things to beat them with. It's not like building something different or like creating something out of nothing. No.
Right.
The system already exists. And the same way you can dismantle somebody's hex or somebody's work by knowing what they put in it, spiritually speaking, you can dismantle the system by knowing how the system works.
There we go.
There
we go.
Life imitates art and conjure imitates life. Like, it's the same thing. So yeah.
Okay. Okay. So how does the system work then? How would you go about?
How would I describe the system?
Yeah.
Okay. So everything is rooted in the idea of Eurocentrism, right? If it comes from Europe and if it comes from like Eurocentric schools of thought, it's good and it works and it's wonderful. Everything that is not Eurocentric, Indigenous, brown, black, etc., 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 it's usually deemed as primitive. It's usually deemed as unevolved. So what happens here? When I'm constantly being told by history, when I'm constantly being told by TV, by mass media, by etc., 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 that all of the civilizations that existed before me are either because of aliens or because of like primitive and cavemen and outdated things, that the moment that the Spaniards came, everything became light and everything became good and everything became da-da-da. If I am constantly hearing this, it's my job to listen to that information, process that information through critical thought and rational thought, okay? And make sure that the facts, the actual things, and the retelling of history adds up. Okay?
Okay.
This process is often not done, and this process is often not encouraged. We could see that when we did that art history lesson that I did with the kids. Like, understanding that Africa as a continent had art movements. Africa as a continent made important discoveries in what we now know as art, what we now know as the alphabet, what we now know as etc., etc., etc. But these are not things that I'm taught by my school. These are not things that I'm taught by my parents. These are not things that I'm taught by my community. So the only person responsible of receiving that information is the person who is seeking that information. Okay? So it's kind of like understanding that the game is that you're supposed to play this role. Okay? And this is the role that you're given, and this is what you're constantly gonna do. Anything that speaks out of that or anything that moves out of that role, it's counterculture. Or it's, oh, hold on. This thing is dying out of battery. Hold on. Let me get my charger real quick.
Okay.
But it's counterculture, or it's speaking against the system, or it's speaking against what's good. Okay? So usually the only way of understanding like how the system works from the inside is getting familiarized with how, like, as history repeats itself, how colonizers implemented the control of information, how colonizers implemented the control of knowledge, okay? And understanding that knowledge is not often, like, will not often come from the oppressor. If your source of knowledge is coming from the people who are interested in you being oppressed, you are to know that the source of knowledge and this knowledge that you're being given, it's a tool to perpetuate this oppression. Easy. Okay?
Simple. Mm-hmm.
So when we talk about the idea of, for example, when people blame aliens for the Mayans and for the Aztecs,
Mm-hmm.
what happens here? I'm not going to sit here and be like, aliens don't exist, because I already know how you feel about aliens. But what I'm going to like say with this is that sometimes it's either they weren't smart enough,
Mm-hmm.
or they needed somebody else or something else to be that smart.
Right.
So it's rooted in colonizer thought.
Right.
The idea of aliens made the pyramids makes it seem like Egyptians weren't prepared enough, weren't scientifically advanced enough, weren't educated enough to build the pyramids.
Right.
So in a way, that perpetuates this idea that our ancient civilizations are inferior,
Mm-hmm.
and they needed the colonizers to get knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
They needed the colonizers to become good, to become smart, to become powerful, to become etc., etc., etc.
Right.
And it goes back to people, for example, when we talk about Venezuela,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people think that we wouldn't be nothing without the colonizers.
Wow.
That if the colonizers hadn't come, we would be still wearing taparrabo, that's basically like the cloth over the genitals, and we will be half naked and jumping on trees and whatnot.
Mm-hmm. And so what?
Exactly.
Right.
What is so bad about Aboriginal
Right.
and native civilizations
Right.
that makes that thought seem like a bad thing?
Mm-hmm.
This is not me sitting here from my iPhone and my iPad being like, no, we don't need like modern day civilizations. Like, that's not me. That's not what I'm saying.
Right.
What I'm trying to say is that we have to understand that a lot of the excuses that we give to justify the act of colonizers are no longer valid.
Right.
Are no longer freaking valid. Because if you look at documentaries of white people that have gone deep in the jungle to talk to the Arawak and to talk to the Amazonians and to talk to like all of that.
Right.
If you look at those documentaries, those people have a system.
Right.
Those people have a leader in the village. They have mothers who take care of the stuff. They have, the children are fed. Like, medicine is being done, like, you know? And if you die, you die.
Right.
It's the cycle of life. You know, the circle of life is the same thing. So it's understanding that the colonizers are not high and mighty. And should never be seen as high and mighty.
Yeah.
Because that's the main thought that the Haitian Revolution wanted to destroy.
Right.
The idea that they are better, that they are good, that they are bigger, that they are smarter.
Right.
When we have been smart, we have been good. Like, understanding, for example, the idea of Haiti is like something that always want, like, I'm always like marveled by the Haitian Revolution, because did you know that the red and blue on most Latin American flags, Ecuador, Bolivia, Colombia, Venezuela, etc., 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 is because of Haiti?
I did not.
We had this guy Simon Bolivar, also known as Simon Bolivar. Simon Bolivar was Venezuelan born. Well, Venezuela back then was called Gran Colombia, the Great Colombia. And he was born in La Gran Colombia. He was a son of Spaniards, right? So everyone who was like descendant of Spaniards back then was called Mantuanos. Mantuanos were the people who were like high class. So Mantuanos were separated from your regular people from La Gran Colombia, or your regular native born, because they were direct descendants of Spain. Okay? What did Simón Bolívar want? He wanted to remove the Spaniard crown from its, like, from the territory of La Gran Colombia. Okay? And he wanted to form a republic. Simón Bolívar was white. Simón Bolívar had money. Simón Bolívar had horses. Simón Bolívar had power. So he said, I am gonna go with my horses and my people and my entire thing, and I'm gonna go country to country, liberating the people and freeing the people from the Spaniard crown.
Wow.
This does not mean freeing the people from slavery. This means removing who is in control. This means removing who moves the little, like, the whole Wizard of Oz situation. Like, who moves the threads, okay?
Right. The puppet master.
The puppet master, exactly. So what happens here? Simón Bolívar hears about the Haiti Revolution. And he's like, wow, they overthrew the French, and the French and the Spaniards were, like, similar in a sense of power back then. It was like, they did that, so I need to talk to somebody over there so they can come here and help me the fuck out.
Right.
There was one man called Francisco de Miranda. Francisco de Miranda told Bolivar that he did not know what the fuck he was doing. Francisco de Miranda wanted, like, to free slaves, wanted to do a lot of shit. Bolivar wasn't with it, and he threw him in jail and called him a traitor. So Bolivar goes on to, like, his Haitian friends, and he's like, hey, I want you to come help me. So would you be okay? Here's some money. And they were like, yeah, we're not convinced. So let's make a deal. What do you want? And Bolivar said, I want some more horses and I want some more men so they can come fight the revolution with me. What do you want? And the Haitians were like, we need you to free your slaves. Like, are we game? Yes, no. He said yes, didn't do it.
Didn't do it. Of course he didn't do it.
So the Haitian men that fought in our revolution are not recorded in history.
Wow.
We have no record aside from the letters between Bolivar and this one general that I'm missing the name right now because I know it's not Toussaint Louverture. But aside from the letters between them, there's no record of Haitian men fighting in the revolution. Wow. There's no record of none of that in the history books that we learn from at school. I came to learn this recently.
Wow.
5 years, 6 years ago. This is not something that is public knowledge. So you're telling me that we owe the liberation of all of these countries that Bolivar, like, freed, quote unquote, to Haiti. Woo. And we did not give any kind of recognition to that?
Goodness.
Aside from a statue, like, it's just one statue. And it's like, you know what? Like, let's put this statue here and thank this man, but let's not put it in the books because it doesn't matter. Let's just, like, oh, this random statue of, like, a Haitian military guy. Yeah, whatever. That's there.
Girl, that made me catch the Holy Spirit. Did you see that?
But it's what it is.
Right.
Like, we are constantly talking about uplifting communities and da-da-da and this and that, like, through, liberation and freedom and
Right.
but we're not recognizing where all these things come from.
Right. So,
And a lot of the white movements have been built on the backs and the bones of Black and brown people, Black, brown, indigenous people. So that's how the system works.
right. Okay. So essentially it's the divesting from that false reality, right? So this has helped me a lot in shifting my thinking from just organized fighting to organized resistance through divestment and pulling out of these systems, which is always on my mind, but the anger in me wants to fight. It wants to chin check.
Mm-hmm.
So, thank you for that. It's this whole time with you has been just so dope. I don't know why we need to be on the phone a lot more often. I'm so excited for you and all the different things that you have going on and how they're about to grow and become larger pillars, honestly, in our communities. What's next for Maria?
What's next for Maria? A lot more classes. I launched recently. I launched a Patreon,
Mm-hmm.
and through that Patreon, I have several things available.
Mm-hmm.
I have like early access to classes. I have all the recordings of all the classes are available on Patreon.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and that's what 15-ish hours of content.
Mm-hmm.
That's available there, from herbalism to tarot to decolonization of the craft,
Mm-hmm.
to witchcraft history, to the Salem witch trials, like kitchen magic. I don't know. I've been talking a lot about a lot of things.
Right.
But there's like right now there's more like than 15 hours of like recorded video content.
Mm-hmm.
And I launched recently a library on Discord.
Mm-hmm.
And that library is constantly being updated with free resources for the community. Mm-hmm. So basically, like, the minimum Patreon right now is $7, $8, I believe, per month. Mm-hmm. And from $8 you get access to like 20 hours of content, more than 250 titles available on everything witchcraft, from demonology to herbology to history of the craft to like documents that are like sacred within like what we call our practices, not traditional African traditional, but like witchcraft practices that would be considered sacred back in the day, and not right now are just like regular for all of us to all go. And there's a lot of stuff. There's like even I put the Maleficum, Maleficarum, whatever, the one that the church was using to hunt witches. I have that on there. Like,
okay,
all of those books are available there for free. So it's like you're paying $8 for more than 300 books.
Wowzers.
So that's kind of like the effort that I'm putting right now. I'm just curating this community and just putting all this like content available for people to just like have.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, like, all of these things and all this gatekeeping when it comes to like knowledge and when it comes to books, that shit don't work no more.
Right.
Like, I cannot rock with that anymore, because I feel like the main concern right now is that we want the knowledge, but where do we find the knowledge?
Right.
So making the knowledge accessible has been like the main goal. Aside from that, I continue to teach. I'm always announcing classes on Instagram, as my Instagram is at Omi the Bruja. And I'm always announcing classes there. I have another mentorship program for witches starting in January, so that's really exciting for me. And I only take mentees for 6 months. I don't do less, so I spent an entire 6 months just like being the shadow of all my mentees. And yeah, being like the one that burns the hand and be like, yeah, don't touch that.
Right.
That's me. That's me right now, and that makes me really happy to be like this sort of quote unquote big sister to like so many practitioners and so many beginner witches. That makes me happy.
Right.
I'm on TikTok.
Love your TikTok.
Thank you.
Love your TikTok.
I'm on TikTok and I'm excited. That's also like a very nice platform for content creating. And I've been like very, let's say, active on there too. So that's part of where we're going. I'm trying to like formalize Magic for the People as a bigger, better, smarter project. And I'm just like watching it evolve into an actual Decolonize mystery school. Still a baby, but it's going to
see it.
Oh, and I make shirts.
Yes, I was gonna ask you, are you wearing it? Because I haven't seen it in blue yet. I love that. Decolonize your witchcraft. Show them the back, or I'll probably post a picture. Can you? Recognize our elders, respect our spirits, defund the oppressor, abolish the cages, destroy the chains, protect each other, take back the land, honor our ancestors, mute the colonizer, uplift our people, and get free. That's the motherfucking formula.
Yes, that's what Magic for the People is about. This is literally like Magic for the People in like a little
that's the formula
in a material shape. Yeah, that's pretty much.
Yeah, that's it. That's all. That's literally all there is to it. So thank you so much for coming through. What is your Cash App so people can give you donations?
My Cash App is the $ Omi the Bruja.
Okay.
And you can often also find all of my financial information on my Instagram. Hold on, this thing. Hold on. Okay. You can find all my financial information and all of that on my Instagram anyways. So
at Omi the Bruja. Thank you so much, Mama. I love you.
You're welcome. I love you too.
All right. And anybody who wants to donate to Omi, please go ahead and do that. If you want to donate to the Nine Minds radio show, I'm at $ the Nine Minds. And you can find me by the time this video comes out, my website will be up. It will be the9minds.com. So
look at the website. Look at God.
Look at God. Look. So if you want me to, I can link your information on the site. I'll have a special page for my guests, and I'll put your picture and everything that you do right there. So I love you, Mama.
I love you too.
And congratulations.
Thank you.
And I'll talk to you soon.
Same. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.